Friends, if you're looking for real old-school laughs, you're in for a treat because we've got them right here. Flip City Magazine. Remember Mad Magazine? Then it went woke? Well, don't worry. Flip City has no chance of going woke. That's right. 4 times a year, you'll get an actual printed magazine full of jokes, stories, comics, and more, all about today's pop culture, entertainment, and woke politics. Flip City takes terrible entertainment trends we love to hate with hilarious parodies of Lord of the Rings, Stranger Things, The Walking Dead, Star Trek, Hunters, and more. Trust me when I say there is nothing else like Flip City on the market. So subscribe today. It will be delivered in print, or you can even get it digitally if you're one of those wacky Zoomers. Either way, follow our link and sign up today, and if you put in midnight, you get an extra 10% off. Check out Flip City Magazine today.
We're gonna get a little bit crazy, wild and maybe even vulgar, if you please. It's after dark and we're gonna light it up. Got some fun in store for you, no tease. It's time for Midnight's Edge. After dark, a little naughty, will hopefully make you chuckle, but we ain't trying to hurt nobody, so get ready quick on the double, cause it's time for Midnight's Edge. After dark.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. It's time for Midnight's Edge After Dark Live. In this episode, Jenna Ortega doesn't want no hand-me-down characters and so much more. Welcome, welcome, welcome one and all to the program. I am Tom Connors. We have with us a panel of distinguished gentlemen, as always. And many more will probably join us as we go along. We have Mr. Scribbles himself. It's Tuesday Schmooze Day, as he says. Hello, Scribelight.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're all having a good Tuesday after, hopefully, those of you that had the day off yesterday. And
yes.
Very excited to talk about entertainment news and all such things.
Infotainment. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
We also have with us Mr. Price of Reason. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing the best I can. Glad to have you here. A little under the weather, but I'll hopefully get through the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I'm having me some chicken soup, so Mikey can not yell at me. Chicken noodle soup. And we also have a Canadian with us, eh?
That's
Hello.
quite the slurp there.
That was fake.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm doing all right. Labor Day is over. And that means that all of the noisy people have gone back to wherever they go, and I have the whole place to myself. Old man
Nice.
yells at cloud. But I like September. It's a beautiful month of the year. It's all the peace and quiet I could ever want. So, yeah, life's good.
Now you were saying this is your beautiful view there. Quite nice.
Yeah, you can see everyone's gone home. So
My God.
it's now my whole backyard. Yeah, it's a nice place, though, yeah.
Nice. Go mountain climbing,
Sometimes.
of course, as you do. So hopefully everybody out there is having a great Tuesday. We have a member chat already from FKHC 2005. He says, I did my part in downvoting the new Snow White film. I think he means the trailer, of course, which I believe... Did that, break the record for most disliked trailer in history yet, or what?
I think it did.
I was going to say, I know Ghostbusters, I think, had it, but...
I mean, it
Yeah,
would
those-
help if she was actually white as snow.
Yeah. What?
It's in the script.
Why would you expect that?
Because it's in the script. It's like that's the character in the story.
Scripts are there to be changed. They're like
Yeah.
rules. They're there to be broken. Write a script and stick to it like it's a plan or something. Just ask Marvel.
Yeah. What is this? A plan? Who does that?
I don't know. Good directors. Oh.
We still have
Confidence
those?
Studios. All right, well,
You know what's
there are
funny?
a few out there. They look wrong.
Do you guys remember James Gunn come out here like a week or so after he just finished shooting Superman? And he's like, yeah, I don't think I'll need any reshoots and all this kind of business. And everybody's just like, well, I just don't understand how he could be done so quickly and not reshoots. It's like, because he probably planned everything so well. It's how he shot Guardians 3 as well, right? Like, if you're a good director and you plan shit, like I swear they forgot how to do pre-production in Hollywood.
Well, I remember like the two of the most significant behind the scenes things that ever stuck out to me as far as like production was Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow and Shoot 'Em Up, because both of these movies were completely storyboarded ahead of time, like the entire thing. Like there was no extra fat to cut from the thing. It was just like here's the thing. In fact, I think Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow was sold on the storyboard alone, or was it Shoot 'Em Up? Either way. And you just think, gosh, imagine, like you say, if you go in with like everything already figured out and envisioned, and you hammer it out before you start rolling film or video in these days, it seems like an alien concept, doesn't it? And all these reshoots and weeks of reshoots, the script rewrites and everything else. Like, well, maybe if you'd had a good thing to start off with, how much money they would have saved. But they don't seem to care anymore. Anyway,
you know what that reminds me of? It's like, okay, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before, but director John G. Alvison went and videotaped the entire Karate Kid rehearsal so that he knew exactly what he was going to need in the movie, and he didn't.
Video storyboarding.
So that by the time they got to shooting, he already kind of had a good idea. So you can see the whole movie in like this rehearsal form. It's awesome. It's cool. It's awesome as shit.
I think the death of the rehearsal has actually been like that. Not to go too far back again, but I just remember when talking about the making of The Thing, they had 2 weeks up in whatever it was, the Arctic Circle, or wherever they filmed The Thing, literally. And all the actors had 2 weeks to rehearse and to get to know each other and to, bum around and try ideas and everything before they even started filming. And all of that led to a kind of natural camaraderie and familiarity that doesn't come across on sort of like the scripted page in the film, but you can kind of get because all these guys had actually lived together for 2 weeks prior to us even seeing them on film. Where did the pre-prep go? Or is that really a dying art? I'd like to hear.
I'm thinking so. That's my question, Scribe. I mean, I'm getting to that point where I'm starting to wonder.
I'm wondering, like, if next time we have a script doctor on or somebody else who's kind of on the inside of these things, or Paul Chatto, I'd be curious to find out, or the next time you see him, find out what they know about.
Well, I swear, Marvel doesn't previs anything.
They previs all their CGI shots and then they fit them into their changing script.
They wing it. They don't plan anything at Marvel anymore.
You ever watch those videos on YouTube that document the factory production process of those like frozen pizzas and other things that you buy at the supermarket? There's no pre-production there, really. It just takes a lump of chemicals and sticks it on a conveyor belt, and the machine drops this crap on it, and then it shrink wraps it. I figure movies are the same way. The McDonald's-ization.
Yeah, the McDonaldization, yeah.
It's not the same as actual. It's not the same as actually making the dough and like hand crafting the shape of the dough and adding the ingredients by hand. It's,
Well, I got to imagine there was a few meetings at Marvel that almost went like the Stonehenge meeting in Spinal Tap. Right? Where they bring in the final video for the the film. They're like, here you go. Here's the Hulk smash scene from whatever Avengers film, and Feige's like, well, yeah, but can you have him do this, and then in that part have him flip around here and do this, and then have one of the bad guys come and jump on his head and do it. But this is the finished shot.
There's actually a real story that happening. There's a real story that happened. So I'm reaching back in my trivia here, so if I get a couple things wrong, somebody in the chat, or otherwise please correct me. Way back when The Black Cauldron was in production at Disney, this is around the time that I think Jeffrey Katzenberg took over along with Eisner, I think. But anyway, there's this story about how Jeffrey Katzenberg was sat down to watch some early rushes or some early production footage of The Black Cauldron. And he's watching it and he turns to the guy and says, hey, I don't like that. We need to change this, 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 and this. And they look at him like, this is animation. We can't do reshoots. And he just did not have any concept of what he was looking at, and he just bought Disney effectively. It's just a very bizarre situation. It tells you something about the mindset and the competency of the people in charge of things sometimes.
Oh, Black Cauldron has a very storied history. In fact, I think Tim Burton either got fired or walked away from the production of that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bunch of other shit that went down with that thing. It was a mess. It was one of the most expensive animated Disney films at that time, too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was meant to be their first PG-rated animated film.
Yeah, it was supposed to be dark and scary.
Well, they were trying to go for a more older audience, a little bit. And I mean, Katzenberg had the right idea. I mean, honestly, he is probably even more responsible for helping bring back Disney from the brink than anybody else. Regardless of some of his stupidity and some of the dumb choices he made, he was the smart person to come up with, we need this Touchstone Pictures or something like that to where we can do adult movies like Splash, right?
Mm-hmm.
Splash made more money in the 80s than any of their animated films did. Another movie,
Touchstone, right?
Yeah, it was Touchstone. Same thing with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That basically brought back their animation studio from the brink of death.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, a lot of people give Little Mermaid and such the credit. It's like, you guys forget, Roger Rabbit was like a make or break for the studio. It was like either this thing works or Disney was done. Right? Like they were at this point where they hadn't produced a hit other than, and they could have just spun Touchstone off into its own business at that point. Right? Mm-hmm. Like they were getting to the point where hanging on to the animation studio was basically an albatross around their neck. Because they had done Fox and the Hound, Black Cauldron, and The Great Mouse Detective, and Oliver and Company. Right. And not a single one of them made any money at the box office, basically. Like, I think Fox and the Hound did the best of all of them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they were at this point where they were ready to just say, fuck it, with animation. And all their animation guys came in to work on Roger Rabbit. And then even then you learned what part of the problem was. It was just this, the reluctance to train and bring in new, fresh animators. And you had a lot of other animators who would become more complacent. Oh, I'm sure Price will be right back.
Yeah,
he's having technical issues. And a lot of the animators have become more complacent, right? Like, because the first few meetings they had on Roger Rabbit, Bob Zemeckis learned all sorts of shit. He's like, well, first things first, I don't want to have to lock the camera down. Like, 'cause I'm sure that's the first thing you guys are going to tell me is I have to lock everything off. And one of the head animators is like, well, not really. He goes, just a lot of these guys have gotten complacent and lazy over the years. He goes, honestly, we should be able to animate in 3D, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's where Bob's like, all right, I'm going to push you guys to the limit. And a great example of that is the Jessica Rabbit scene. Has so much going on in there. You have a complete 360 shot of Jessica.
Yes.
You have the special effects going on in her dress. You have the shadows. Mm-hmm. You have all the other characters that are going on around all of the staged live action stuff. So that scene is a great example of them using just about every single trick in the book that they came up with for Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, Roger Rabbit, just the level of putting two-dimensional characters in a three-dimensional space and filming around, it just boggles the mind when you think about it, especially when you see the behind-the-scenes stuff, just the kind of technical wizardry that was needed to accomplish just half of that, and the quality just never dropped. I just remember as a kid just being so overwhelmed with that movie and everything about it. It was so good. Still,
yeah.
So
3 Men and a Baby was another one that really helped the studio. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, very much so.
Especially the ghost. The ghost in the apartment did that too. Was the ghost?
Yeah. What's his face is Standy.
Ted Danson.
Ted Danson. But we got Pilgrim Media in the house. How you doing, Pilgrim? Hello, Pilgrim. Sends in 2 and says CLD money laundering could be a thing in the movie fails.
If the movie fails, money laundering.
Well, it's funny because I kind of brought that up about The Crow. About how that
producers
basically was a producer's scam,
mm-hmm.
It feels like to me. Because as soon as Pressman died, they went out and pushed this new version. That'd be the producer who produced the original version, and you may know his name from things like Alien and Conan the Barbarian and Masters of the Universe and so on. He's produced tons of things. or been involved with tons of things. And he was like the only one that felt like who was keeping any kind of like, no, we got to keep this in a certain kind of level of respectability.
Yeah.
Right. And then as soon as he was gone, they pushed this at one of the in the foreign film market, and they basically got a bunch of investors. So they had all the money up front. Right. Mm-hmm. And then Lionsgate bought in, threw in another $10 million on top of that, plus 15 in advertising for the US. So the company that put this together is basically out nothing.
Right. Covered.
And they basically got to pocket whatever their production costs were.
Lionsgate is just not doing great lately, are they?
Well, at least they won't lose as much on the Crow as they did
true.
Borderlands.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, they got that covered from the initial investment, but still, it's just like bad investment decisions over and over and over again.
And honestly, I think Lionsgate covered their ass by selling it to, what was it, Pluto is going to be showing it next month for free. So like they must have got a payment out for that.
You know, I know this is a little bit, or I should say, tangential to all this, but I forget where I heard it, but somebody made a good point about the failure of, so since we're talking about like Borderlands and The Crow, we got these IP type deals. Somebody made a good point about the failure of Concord, in that, for those of you that don't know, the video game Concord, which came out like 2 weeks ago, is now being willowed after 8 years and $200 million put into it or something like that. And
disaster.
Yeah, absolute disaster. But one thing, and everybody's like sort of cheering. It's like, aha, see, look, we got you guys. We won a battle against stupid video game producers. And like, oh, to a certain extent. But there's also an argument that says that Concord's failure will make studios, video games, and conceivably even movie studios further shy away from taking a chance on new IP or like a non-established IP. And just keep
putting all that garbage into something else instead of something we like.
Putting all that
lessons. They always
learn
the wrong lessons.
That's the trouble.
And put money into IPs and then ruin them, etc., as they have been before, rather than like at least trying to do something new. So I was wondering what you guys thought about that idea.
No, that's a good point. Go ahead, CC. Sorry.
There's another franchise that had it's actually a franchise, not as opposed to Concord, which is a completely new IP. But a franchise I grew up around was Squaresoft's Mana series, right? Mm-hmm. And that there's a series that built its entire fan base, whether or not you've played it, it built its entire fan base on pixel art, like 16-bit, 32-bit, like classic Super Nintendo, like old school 2-dimensional games. Now, I haven't played the new games, so for anybody who enjoyed it, awesome. But the game has kind of been a bit of a failure financially, at least enough that the studio is being, people are being laid off, right? So they're not going to continue with that group of creatives. This new entry was made in 3D. And look, I like some 3D games, but that's not what I'm a fan of the series for, right? It just didn't interest me. And if I'm the person they're trying to sell that to, and they're not really doing it in the style that made me a fan of it, I mean, I'm going to miss out if it's a really good game, but it's definitely not, it's like they could have spent a lot less money to make a much simpler game that would have satisfied fans of the series, because the series was built on a much, like older, cheaper production value, right? I mean, pixel art's not totally cheap, but it's cheaper than Concord. And in the case of Concord, it's a new IP, but like, what are they doing here, right? They're just copy-pasting a very, very oversaturated marketplace. There's 1,000 other games just like it that cost less and have established fan bases. And I'm sure that it's great. You want to create something new? Sure. But then if you're just going to give me a plain bun cheeseburger, with no actual identity, they're just like, basically AI could have created this, right?
I just don't understand why they keep dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into these huge risk-taking type deals. As you say, in a saturated market. If you really wanted to establish an IP first, why don't you do something like you say, a smaller, cheaper, just side scroller, with these characters and see if there's any
Exactly.
interest if you get an interest in the setting and the characters and the world on a smaller budget first, then you can build up to things like looter shooters or whatever else. I mean, what's Marvel about to come out with their enemies or whatever it's called thing, Rivals? And so you have to start from the ground up. I remember the Shadows of the Empire project. You guys remember this? Those of you old school people.
I think so.
Where it was all a test run of the marketing machine they were going to use for the prequel movies for Star Wars. But instead, they made up a movie that didn't actually exist. They made the book, they made the video game, they made the toys, they did everything but the movie because they were just building up their infrastructure and testing out what they need to do. And there's a lot of elements of that IP, even though they've killed off the EU now, that still stand the test of time because they actually took the time to, sort of saturate the fan base with all these different elements of it to satisfy a bunch of people's interests.
Well, you touched on two things there, right? The first thing is, imagine that once upon a time you would create something new on a small scale and then build up again, video games. There's a great side scroller called The Messenger came out a few years ago. And the team, they didn't really want to make a side scroller. They wanted to make this big passion project, right? Which became Sea of Stars. But they had the budget for a side scroller. So they made a really, really great budget side scroller that sold really, really well and made the money. And then they used that to fund their passion project. They built their studio up through that actual ground up process rather than just breaking the bank on something, over, way over budget. I completely forgot what the second thing is I was going to say, but, I saw with look at the Fast and Furious franchise, whatever it is today, the successful films in that franchise happened because they started making better films, right? I mean, the third film in that franchise wasn't particularly well received, but I
would argue that the first one was the best movie out of all those movies.
But you saw success after, particularly after the fourth and fifth were a better product, right?
Sure.
The sixth film did actually quite well, and then they started to kind of just get stupid and absurd, and it fell off, right? You create sustained success by creating a good product over and over and over again.
Yeah,
I think it gets a little bit lost,
Yeah, there's just one more video game thing before we move on or something. There's one other franchise that I'm in love with that the company that makes it has done nothing else with the IP. They've just focused on making a great game. That's called Grim Dawn, which is like this action RPG that is just, I mean, the company that produces it, Crate Entertainment, they're like Blizzard of the old school, where they just keep refining, fixing, adding on to this game over the years. And I keep saying this would be great as a tabletop RPG, or this would be great as this, or as this, that, or the other. And they're like, no, we're going to focus on making the best game we can right now. And they're still doing it. It's like 6 or 7 years on. And it's crazy. So yeah, if you have to establish something first and you have to start small, you don't do these big splash. I can't believe that somebody at Sony did Concord, right? Was that right? Sony's like, we're going to earmark 200 or 150 million, $200 million over 8 years to make this thing that has no provable value to anyone. An IP that has never been tested. We've never marketed it with anything else first, not like some novels or some other smaller games or something, and just write out a check for $150, $200 million. I do not understand, especially after all of the test cases in the same vein that have happened over the years, how that still makes sense to anybody. But I digress.
Yeah, I mean, you made a good point up front, though. They're not going to learn the correct lesson from this. 'Cause honestly, I don't see a problem with this game existing because it just shows you how little of an audience there is for this garbage. And it goes to the point that you guys were making before, is that spending $200-some million on this game or whatever it is was a big mistake. This shouldn't be anything more than a low-budget indie game, which, again, it kind of goes along with what we say about the same kind of thing about films, right? But
Fella you're with, a black kid, dresses like a writer. Does he know anything?
You are racist.
So yeah, for those who may not remember what this is,
That's Twitter in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's the game we're talking about right now. So yeah.
Oh, and that's Dustborn. The Concord was the other one.
Oh yeah, Concord. That's Dustborn. You're right. Pinochet's Helicopter Tours says with $2, way more entertaining to watch. Devs light money on fire. Oh, developers light money on fire. Yeah, right.
Well,
Pinochet's also been here for 36 months. Thank you. That's all I just wanted to say.
Yeah, no, well, like I say, it is, sort of sitting in your lawn chair watching the world burn kind of thing when something like this happens. But at the same time, you got to remember that this is telling the industry what to and not to do, and like I say, learning the wrong lessons from. If they keep making these games and losing a bunch of money, and then they shy away, some other studio that's got a brand new IP is going to have a harder time making that sale to an investor now, because the proof is in the pudding. You can't sell new IPs. Nobody wants new IPs. They want established IPs like Marvel and this, that, and the other to make these kind of games. And so it's a good news, bad news kind of thing. You see a big giant like Sony fall on their face, but then anybody else that might actually have something that people be interested in, tougher hill to climb. So it's like if you like superhero movies, you don't want to see superhero movies fail, because then people will be less likely to make superhero movies. You want to see the quality come through.
Yeah. But all right, kids, let's keep moving along here, unless there was anything more you guys wanted to say on this Concord business. Price, you've been kind of quiet. I didn't know if you had anything to add to it.
Well, I mean, I don't really know what to say about it. I think that I'm happy on the one hand. I think it is better that these games are getting shut down. But at the same time, it's like whatever Scribe was saying. In other words, that I don't know if they learn the right lessons. And the reason why they don't learn the right lessons is, you know that Paul Tassi guy from Forbes? You look at the way he explains stuff, he never gives the right explanation as to why the game failed. It'll always be some other explanation. And I think that when you have this kind of enforcement from all the quote-unquote gaming media, or whatever you want to call these shills, they never want to say what the truth is. And I think that the executives at these companies either don't want to know what the truth is, or just listen to these shills, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. We also have joining us Mr. Andy Masterson. How you doing?
Hey, Andy.
That was my 2 cents in any case. Hey, Andy.
Hi, guys.
Let me see. Your audio is a little jacked here.
You're a little muffled.
Let me fix this. Here we go. That might help.
Is it good?
So I can pick up my gain. How's that any better?
There you go.
There we go. Much better.
Doomcock stuff is really sensitive, so I try and keep it.
No worries.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any talent left in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Did they chase it all away, or are they working somewhere else, or did they retire?
They have
all the above. But Cece, you were about to say something on the Concord business too, I think.
Oh yeah, sure. I was just going to mention with the PS5 in general and Concord and Sony, it's like you have this the PS5 is now I'll say that's a bit of a failure of a system at this point. And yes, the world viral event of several years ago was a factor with the chip shortage and all that. But I mean, you can buy a computer now for the same price as a PS5 that's at least as powerful as a PS5, and you get the computer on top of it. So I mean, it's like what's even the point of that? And I saw somebody mention that Sony's thinking about raising the price of the PS5 to make up for Concord. I don't know if that's true, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did that. They've already done it before, right? They've already that's not the right lesson to take from the situation. And going back to Visions of Mana, I'll look. I'm not saying the game was a flop. I haven't played the game. I might play it. I might love the game, but it was clearly an expensive game, right? It took a fairly significant team years to make, right? Whereas it could have been a much smaller project, much smaller passion project made more in the style of what built the franchise. That might have served a better outcome. That's about as much as I can say, but I mean, Sony is... There's a lot more to unpack there, so I could go on for an hour.
Fair enough. Andy, are you up to speed on any of this Concord business or anything like that?
No, I do talk to my son about like the world of video gaming because
Right.
that's his purview. But I find it very interesting that every single avenue that they try to invade with all their nonsense is failing miserably. And it's not even like that. It's kind of like when they had the thing where what's her face, the snotty one, was blaming everybody for the Acolyte's failure, the wooden plank. She's complaining that everyone review bombed the thing and crushed it. Well, if we're not that important, and that's the thing, not that many people watch YouTube. Like, we could walk in a convention or something and there would be people that would like, oh, I recognize your voice, I've seen you on this live stream or something, but it's a very small niche community. The rejection this is facing is because it's large scale. It's much larger than people that are on the internet hearing people trash this. Like they go, and these games aren't cheap. They go and they're going to spend all this money. And, it's like when Az had his epic meltdown with the whole, fucking pronouns thing. And whether you agree with him or not, he made a point from like the average normie thing. Everybody wants an escapism. And you shove all this crap down their throat all the time, telling people that they're horrible, telling them that and nobody wants to hear it. So it's being rejected in film, it's being rejected in television, it's being rejected in video games, it's being rejected in marketing. Like, look at Bud Light. I don't know how expensive this has to get before somebody decides to tell Larry Fink, you are definitely championing the wrong cause.
Yeah, and on the note of Hollywood, I mean, that's kind of a perfect segue into our first topic of the day. I mean, maybe Hollywood and the gaming industry can learn from this, maybe not. But Jenna Ortega is someone who's trying to teach the industry a little bit, it seems here. She says that women should have their own franchises and that she don't want to be Jamie Bond.
Yeah.
The Beetlejuice star reacts to the trend of reimagining iconic male roles in this new article.
Just on that one, I mean, they've been trying for years. I mean, how many, I think of like Atomic Blonde, I think of Salt. There was Columbiana. There's been tons of like girl action startup new franchise IPs or characters that have been attempted, but they almost rarely ever get past one movie.
Paul Feig should kick himself in the ass for remaking Ghostbusters, because before that he had it made. Yeah. He had his own little niche, and it was doing very well. Both women and men liked his films. Between Bridesmaids, The Heat, and Spy, I mean, there was nothing wrong with those. What was Bridesmaids? Well, Bridesmaids was basically Bachelor Party, but with women. Well, what was The Heat? Heat was basically every buddy cop movie, but with women. What was Spy? Well, Spy was basically Jamie Bond, right? Like a fat James Bond. But I mean, it was still, point being is he already had this niche. He already had this thing. That's what you do, right? Ghostbusters shouldn't have been Ghostbusters remade with chicks. It should have been Paul Feig's take on something like that, right? I would have had no problem if it was called, like Ghostbreakers or, something along those lines where it was, okay, it's in the vein of Ghostbusters, but it's not Ghostbusters. Right?
Spookstalkers.
Yeah, whatever. And I mean, even all the story had to be was something like, okay, you got these chicks who are like doing like this internet or cable, like ghost haunted house show where they know they're full of shit. And then all of a sudden they actually go to a house that actually has real ghosts. So there's your plot.
And
right?
They could have called it Spook Ladies.
Yeah, something, or Spook House, or whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. Anything but Ghostbusters.
Right.
And that goes right along with this, yeah.
Does anyone else find the irony in something like The Acolyte, where for years it was always accepted that women's programming was primarily focused around romance and love stories and things like that? And you check out the Lifetime Network where, like, here's the nice girl that falls for the bad boy and stuff like that. And they take The Acolyte and they invade Star Wars. And what do? They make a plot about the good girl falling for the bad boy. It's almost if like you already had your own space there. Why didn't you just stay there? Why do you have to go and like invade this over here? It's like, and Jenna Ortega, I've heard somebody made a video not long ago about her where she was concerned about free speech when it was impinging on her free speech because I think she was pro-Palestine or something like that, and then she didn't like the blowback she was getting. I don't care what her motivations are for whatever reason. If she gets the right take, and she's putting it out there and is being heard, I don't care if she's full of shit or not. The right take is the right take. And I think she's picking up on the undercurrents here, because this is the second thing that she's come out with, that like, yeah, make women's stuff their own women's thing. Now, the only thing that's missing from this is let boys have their own thing as well. Because let's face it, like women, at least with my wife, and we've been married a long time, and she'll say to me like, you want to go see what? All right, you go and enjoy that. She doesn't want to go see the Marvel movies. I don't think she's ever seen a Marvel movie. She doesn't want to go see the Star Wars movies. She doesn't want to go see any of that. Now, if something comes out with Julia Roberts or The Notebook or some shit like that, she's probably going to drag my ass to it. Well, in theory, because we'll watch it on video. But still, that's the idea. There are different tastes. And yeah, you can have some women that will gravitate towards some of this stuff with the sci-fi superhero stuff. But for the most part, they want Barbie. And my daughter loved Barbie. She doesn't want to go see the other stuff. So they got to get back to that.
Well, unfortunately, the last 10 or 15 years, they've been progressively vilifying the elements that make up masculinity in men, toxic masculinity, this, that, and the other. So they have to keep blunting it. They have to keep, pointing it out. So somebody, I made a joke the other day. Somebody put up a post saying that they're maybe developing a Hulk TV series again. And I was just like, oh, I can't wait for the line somewhere to be in there. His powers come from gamma radiation. Talk about toxic masculinity, something like that.
Yeah.
Because men and women, boys and girls, believe it or not, are different. Hasbro knew this in the 80s. G.I. Joe and My Little Pony, they both sold great because they catered to the natural inclinations of most boys and most girls. Or you could find some, space in between.
Well, I say Barbie's usually the better example, because Barbie can be anything, and you can feed anything into Barbie, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, well, I just want to say something else. Jenna Ortega, I mean, she comes up with some good takes at times, especially if you remember, she rewrote bits and pieces of Wednesday to make the character more true to the source material against the writer's intentions. Because she looked at the script and said, Wednesday wouldn't say this. She wouldn't act like this. And so a little bit going rogue, but at the same time, she probably saved that show from being a complete disaster. I didn't think it was
right. And that's probably not something an actor should pull until they played the character for a while. But
it's true. But we're going to establish source material, though. So if you're like, okay, well, I got to adhere to what the fans would expect, I can appreciate that. Not the wisest, necessarily professional way to go about it, but I appreciate where she was coming from.
Well, let's actually dig into this here and see what's actually said about this. So Jenna Ortega weighed in on the trend of remaking iconic female leads. The Wednesday star was doing an interview with MTV along with her Beetlejuice co-star Catherine O'Hara. Host John Horowitz asked Ortega's thoughts on other potential sequels, like would she be interested in starring in a sequel to one of Tim Burton's classics, Edward Scissorhands, which could hypothetically be called Edith Scissorhands, with Ortega in the Johnny Depp role. Now, we've actually already had a quasi-sequel to this in a commercial form where Timothy Chalamet actually played Edward Jr.
That's right.
I don't know if you guys remember that Super Bowl commercial, but anyway. Well,
yeah,
Ortega,
I thought it was super annoying.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
Annoyed, and I remember tweeting about how annoyed I am when I saw it.
The part that bothered me was that Johnny Depp wasn't involved.
Right, that's why. It's like, oh, we can't bring Johnny Depp because he's been canceled, so let's bring Timothy Chalamet. And those are two things that I don't like to think about separately, but then together they're even worse, because Timothy Chalamet is kind of annoying to begin with, and I like Johnny Depp, so the two things together just didn't.
I'm starting to warm up to Chalamet, and I'm starting to see him as the de facto next Johnny Depp, so I can kind of see that. But yeah, that was my problem with it, was that Johnny Depp wasn't a part of it.
There's something about Chalamet that I just can't fully, I
don't know. He's growing on me. I don't know what it is either, but yeah. Anyway,
like a fungus.
Compared to a lot of other weasels his age, he's not the most terrible.
After seeing Wonka, I was just kind of like, okay, the kid can fucking act.
I thought that he was shit in Wonka. I thought that he should stop acting for a while and go hide in a shed after I saw Wonka.
And Dune, I thought he did great in. He was the best part of a horrible film. But you were about to say something.
He was acceptable in Dune, and he stepped up. He stepped up in Dune. But Wonka, I can't give you that. He had no character. When you think of Gene Wilder and then you think of Chalamet, that's like
I don't know. He felt like a young Gene Wilder to me.
Not
like
to
if they'd
me.
have gave him blonde hair, I'd have been like he'd have been spot on.
I don't know, man. I usually I'm.
And I went into it kicking and screaming. I didn't expect to like it, so take that as you will. So
I don't know. You and I usually have a lot of similar takes, but I'll say that in this case, like I am 100% against what you're saying. Timothy
I didn't care
Chalamet-
for Wonka the movie overall so much. I thought it was okay at best. His
I thought it
performance
sucked.
surprised me, though. I
I
remember
thought
saying
it
that.
sucked, and he sucked in it.
Yeah, that's your
Okay, fight it out. You guys need to
Spark
fight it out.
of
Take it
power.
outside, guys. Take it outside.
It's okay though.
Grudge
I mean,
match.
if you like Timothy Chalamet, you like Timothy Chalamet. I can't do anything about it.
That being said, let's get back into this here. Unless CC, I know you were going to say something there. I think.
Well, I was just gonna ask: is that Edith Scissorhands thing a joke, or were they actually?
I think
is
it's a
that
joke.
Real?
It's a joke,
okay.
but it's something
Better
that
be
they
a joke.
try.
But that's something they would try. While Ortega and O'Hara initially found the idea funny, Ortega quickly added, "I love that there's a lot more female leads nowadays." You know what? That's a good way to start, because unlike most of them, there's like, what was it, like J-Law and some of the other ones are like, there's just no female characters anymore. It's like, are you shitting me?
Reality. Acknowledge reality.
Yeah, it's like you've come a long way, baby, from back in the day when you're at best unless you were like a Barbara Streisand or somebody like that, or what's her face, Elizabeth Taylor, or the rare occurrence where you'd get a movie like Cleopatra built around you. Then yeah, you were playing the wife. So like, yeah, or the female interest, right? Like I get it. Things have gotten better. At least she's acknowledging that. Good. Okay, well that's a great start. I think that's so special, but we should have our own, she said. I don't like it when it's like a spin-off. I don't want to see like Jamie Bond, you know? I want to see another badass. The comment comes amid another press interview getting some attention, which also brought up the idea of rethinking James Bond. At the Venice International Film Festival on Tuesday, Daniel Craig appeared with filmmaker Luca Guadagnino, I don't fuck how to say that, in support of their film Queer, where Craig has sex scenes with co-star Omar Apollo. Oh, brilliant. Craig's whose version of Bond was killed off in 2021's No Time to Die, was asked if queer meant that Bond might identify as LGBTQ someday. Why do we jump to that conclusion?
I'm out. Sorry, nope.
And
No.
then
That's
Guadagnino shut down the question. Says, guys, let's be adults in the room for a second. Thank God.
Wow. I'm impressed. Damn. All right.
Maybe shit is starting to change a little bit here. I've been saying it for a while, but anyway, the idea of a shaking up is not just stirring. The straight, white, and often chauvinistic James Bond has been a topic of debate for years, only to you people.
Often, always. James Bond is the male chauvinist, and that's why we like him. He lives out our fantasies. He is the super spy. He gets all the pretty ladies.
Robert Meyer Burnett
He does all
said
things.
it best. We allow Bond a few graces because he is out there not knowing if he's going to live again another day, right?
Mm-hmm.
He could die tomorrow. He's going to die saving the planet usually. So the audience is willing to forgive some of those things. And you know what? Guess what? Some women actually kind of like that.
Well, it's also a mindset that's kind of gone by the wayside over the decades, because when James Bond was first coming out, we're talking post-World War II, where most of the generation had an idea of what it meant to put your life on the line for something, either directly or through an immediate family member. And so the like I say, the allowances you would give to somebody who's putting their life on the line for Queen and country don't really translate these days, because people can't have the imagination of what it might be like if you're actually in that situation, or that kind of mindset that would be needed.
Well, and he lives like he's only got one day left to live. That's the other kind of point. Yeah.
Exactly.
Also, I have a question. All these ladies, like if you think of Kathleen Kennedy and her movies, there's always like a male abuser, and the women love him. Like Ray loves Kylo Ren, and whatever Amanda Stenberg's character loves Manny, whatever the fuck his name is.
Manny Faces?
Yeah, because he's an abuser. There's always an abuser, and they love him. So why are they so pissed off when like Bond is suave and cool with the ladies? You know what I mean?
Because he's not an abuser or a bad guy. I think he just answered your question.
Yeah, he's the protagonist and he's the star of the show. Those are the two things. That make
That's what it
yeah.
should be. I think that like one day the Hollywood executive that's just going to get up and say, you know what, fuck all this. He's like awesome. All the ladies like him. Fuck you. Let's call Henry Cavill and let's make a movie like I think that movie would make a ton of money, and
Oh, yeah,
everybody
it would.
shut their
Oh,
mouths
yeah.
once and for all.
Oh yeah.
The ladies would melt over that, and that's just it. They don't like that idea, right? They like that you can have the gay fantasy, the LGBTQ fantasy, all that kind of business. They don't
can
realize
still have those fantasies, all of them can like fill up a small community theater and talk about that, while regular audiences go and watch an awesome James Bond who's a ladies man. You know what I mean?
Well, I was just going to say, it's got to be a California thing, because they've got to be so, like, androgynous there at this point that they think that there's this whole world out there that doesn't want to see beautiful people. Like, I don't get it. Like, what is
Right.
wrong with you? Like, I'm even a guy, and I'll acknowledge that, yes, Henry Cavill is a very sexy dude. I can understand why women fawn over him. I wish I looked like Henry Cavill. Right? Like,
It would be an
Right.
advantage, at least in some circles.
And you'd also enjoy at least being able to project yourself into the roles that he plays as a character. Then that's the whole point of this, is escapism, right?
well, and
It's
it gets
just
us
like-
back to the point you were saying before, Scribe, about how men and women view characters differently, and it goes
Right.
all the way back to how we play with toys.
Mhm.
When a boy falls in love with something or wants to play something or be something, they learn everything there is to know about it, right? To try and be the best there is to be at that, right? Whether it's a fireman, whether it's a ninja turtle like me, or whatever it is, like you just want to know everything there is to know about that thing or person or whatever have you. Women, on the other hand, they like to project whatever it is into that. That's why Barbie, I said, works so well for women, and whatever masculine heroic character works for men, because, and that's the thing with little boys, is inherently we want to be the hero, right? We want to be the guy who saves the day, and a lot of it has to do with honor and respect. And I got into this huge fucking debate with some idiot asshole on some post about what honor really means, because it was this, it just so happened to be a black guy and a white guy got into a fight.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
the white guy kicked his ass, basically had him pinned down, and they got up, they mutually shook hands, so obviously there was a truce. And as they were shaking hands, the black dude sucker punched the white guy.
Yeah.
And I said something about it being dishonorable, and some other dude come in, and of course, and he's all like, it's a fucking street fight, there ain't no such thing as honor. I said, like, okay, first of all, you're talking about rules and honor are two completely different fucking things. Right, is what we got down through the debate, because he's like, you acting like it's a boxing match and all that shit and all that stuff. I'm like, no. This is why honor is important. There's a big difference between being honorable and following rules in a fight, right? The honorable thing would be for that guy to have walked away, not sucker punched him, right? Right. So he's dishonorable. End of discussion, right? And this guy went on for days arguing with other people about this shit. Just wouldn't take the L. And that's the thing. Boys love the idea of being an honorable hero. It's the world that kind of usually gets to us after a while, that, sooner or later, most of us just turn into the miserable pieces of shit that we are. So, yeah.
Oh.
Except for Andy. Andy's like everything that we wish we were, because he's like an Adonis.
The thing that drives me crazy with all this stuff is like these women that bash James Bond. But if you just look at the data on Tinder from all these women, like anyone who is a 6 and above, are all falling all over each other, trying to go for this top 15% of men who's going to bang them and never call them again. And they just keep lining up, wondering why they don't get called back, and with this big mystery. And yet those guys that they're chasing after are the exact same James Bond archetype, the best looking guys they can find. And then they sit down and they say, why aren't there any nice guys around anymore? Well, because, and what's the joke there? The meme, they're in the friend zone where you left them. And I think it's starting to change, because I see in my daughter's generation that the girls are starting to be a lot more picky. They're being a lot more choosy. They're looking for better qualities in a guy than just like the hottest guy out there. So I'm thinking that a lot of this stuff has kind of run its course. Hopefully, you're always going to have some bimbette out there who's going to be, all she wants to do is be seen with the hottest guy. But in reality, like there's got to be something more there. And you just have to be honest. And I think that's one of the problems, is like, men have no problem with the inherent honesty that like we want to look at beautiful women. And it's, I mean, that's just men. That's how we're wired. We like to look at beautiful things. And the evidence to that is like, is gay porn. Okay. Because there's no equivalent to female porn that like, does all the millions and millions. Well, we see it on YouTube and all that. I love Tom. Tom's a great guy. We put Tom in his hot tub and
I wish I had a hot tub.
He's not getting any more views, but you get some chick with gigantic knockers in there in her friggin' hot tub, and all of a sudden she's got 2,500 people in her friggin' chat, and sending her super chats and stuff like that, and she just made a payday. That's
Challenge
all
accepted.
That's all from guys like saying it. Now, if you had Henry Cavill doing the same thing, you'd have Anna and a bunch of gay men, throwing all their money at her. But that's the thing. It's the hypocrisy. Like the reality is, no, all these women that say like, oh, toxic masculinity, blah, blah, blah. They're the same ones that share the shirtless fireman pictures on Facebook. Just be honest about yourself. Like, don't sit there and say that it's like, it's one thing. Then when it's not, it's like, it's just hypocrisy. It's like, it's the rule when I want it to be the rule, but it's not the rule when I don't want it to be the rule.
Yeah. Well, and that gets me back to my initial point I was making with the whole, projection of women onto what they want to be and men, understanding and trying to aspire to be, right? Because that's the thing is women can't stand a woman being in a movie that's sexier than them, right? Like that's the mentality of these people that are in Hollywood right now.
Right.
It's like, did you forget that other women do like to look at sexy women and they do attract men as well? And same thing goes for women to men. Like, as you guys just pointed out, yeah, you put the right guy in something, women will fawn over them. Now, Henry Cavill hasn't necessarily proven that he can be a box office draw, but you put him in the right role, I think it would work. I think Bond is the perfect, kind of capsule for him. Right? Oh, there you go.
It's Leslie Headtails.
Hi, everybody.
Leslie Headtails. Hi, Leslie.
Yeah. Personal assistant to Harvey Weinstein the Hut.
Yeah.
Oh, Truda. So anyway, yeah, I mean, it just kind of goes on here more about Bond than anything, but I mean, Bond has been the one that's been debated the most, and I mean, that's pretty much wise, because he's constantly being called this male chauvinist, what have you, right? You know what I love about this whole thing, too, is like the type of man that Bond is, at least used to be until the more modern Bonds, is basically the guy that Eddie Murphy talks about in that skit. And I can't remember if it was in Delirious or Raw. I think it was in Delirious. He's like, you can't just get away with shit you used to do. Like men and women had different kinds of like relationships back in the day. You just smack a bitch and she'd be like, ah! And she'd be like, let me out of the car. And he'd be like, no, we're not having any of that. And you just keep driving. Nowadays, do that shit. She'd be like, I'll fucking kill you. My daddy will kill you. My brother will kill you. I will kill you in your sleep, motherfucker. I'll chop your dick off. And you'd be like, get the fuck out of the car. She'll be like, stop this car. I'm getting out. All right, get the fuck out the car. Like, that was in the 80s, right? Like, men were like done with that shit. It's like, okay, fine. You don't want us to be providers and fucking, what we were built to be, then you're on your own. All right, see ya. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's condolence, or, any kind of excuse for treatment of anybody. That was just I was just reiterating the joke. But the point being is, women say that chivalry is dead, right? Mm-hmm. And we all say, well,
women
killed it.
Yeah,
right?
Women killed it.
Yeah. Well, feminism really killed it more so, but yeah.
Well, no.
I'm going to say,
oh, sorry.
Women are expensive, so it dang well better be worth the effort, because work is hard. And it's not always fun. And it seems to pay less and less. So
there's a way to do Bond in the modern day that puts enough of an edge on him that doesn't make him an angel and doesn't make him soft, but still is a hero. I mean, Bond is, after a fashion, an anti-hero, right? He does the things that the law and the above the law kind of things don't do in order to get the job done. But he's classy while he's doing it. But he obviously has an edge to be able to like have the mentality to do what he has to do, which is like the old school, like, if I need to murder someone for Queen and Country off the cuff, I will do so. and I'm the kind of person who can do that and still walk away and feel good about myself.
But can he kill the woman he loves?
Wouldn't that be a twist? If you had a James Bond movie where like
007 for love or country.
Yeah, if you actually had a James Bond movie where the love interest, the total like completely innocent, helpful love interest at the end of the day, that isn't just like the evil version of the love interest like in most Bond movies where you have like the good girl and the bad henchman or something, but actually he gets betrayed at the very end and then he has to do something terrible. Oh, wouldn't that be terrible? That'd be great.
I mean, has there really been any more interesting twists in the Bond franchise?
I don't know. There's anything. I don't think there's anything left to do except just a new actor, and I'd like to see them go really old school and just drop all like the super weapon stuff and take it very Jason Bourne, but with style. That's what they kind of tried to do with Daniel Craig, but they kept falling back into these giant evil plots with bad guys in their super bases in the desert.
Too many feelings. Also, he became very sensitive.
Yeah, Mr. Feelings Bond. Mr. Huggy Bond.
Well, I mean, some people didn't like that kind of move, making him more like Bourne. I mean, I'm not a huge Bond fan, so like I have very little. I've only seen a few of the films. I like the concept. I like the idea. I've seen so many. Like my problem was I had seen so many of the parodies and ripoffs by the time I finally got around to watching Bond that it kind of, honestly, like the first few films were boring.
Oh, I used to binge when they had the marathons on TBS. I used to binge those all the time. I read some of the books.
They were just not something I grew up with, and I totally like understand what people love about them, especially if you grew up with them, right? But that was just for some reason my dad was never into James Bond, so it was never like if there was a marathon or something like that. My dad was never like, oh, James Bond is on, But if it was John Wayne, something like that, oh, definitely. But like. Yeah, so I grew up with with stuff like Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, the action cop films, Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood.
How could you not appreciate Sean Connery as James Bond, even if the movies are dated? Just his whole vibe.
I don't think my dad ever really cared for Sean Connery.
The way he carries himself. You like Timothée Chalamet and you don't like Sean Connery?
Oh, I didn't say that. I'm saying that I just didn't grow up in an environment where like. I'm trying to think my first time I probably ever saw Sean Connery in anything was actually probably like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade or something like that. I'm trying to remember.
Sean Connery is in Dr. No, which is in my opinion maybe the best Bond movie, the first one. Sean Connery just has the such a wonderful presence as James Bond. You can't recreate it. And that
one was okay. I like that one. The one I like the most so far that I've seen.
How he is. You could do 70 parodies, but you can't.
See, I like the most racist one. I like You Only Live Twice.
You can't take away how cool Sean Connery was. You just can't, in my opinion.
I mean, so like I was just saying, like, yeah, I just didn't grow up around it, so it wasn't like my thing. But if I was going to redo it or somebody who tasked me with it, besides first thing going to like guys like you and Robert Burnett and other people who know Bond, was I would be like, just set it back in the 60s. Get it out of the modern age.
Yeah.
First of all, kind of like with Indiana Jones, like you got to kind of keep it in that same time period for it to kind of work. Bond works best in the Cold War era.
Exactly. Yeah. And then so this is something else I appreciate about the horror movies sometimes where they're like forced to be set back in the 80s or the 70s or something in order to avoid the cell phone solution to all problems.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. Right. So if you take it back to the 60s, then you're definitely hamstringing all the really super duper weapons and nonsense. Even though I can appreciate a good super weapon from time to time. I mean, Goldfinger and the laser beam and all that, as long as it's just isolated and not everything.
I liked the more out there gadgets, right? Like that's what I liked about the 60s movies that I did see of Bond was when he did finally get to the fancier cool gadgets. To me, that was part of the appeal. Because like the first few Bond movies just felt like generic action films to me. Once you got to You Only Live Twice, that's when I started seeing all the Bondisms start to come in. Right, and that's when I started getting into it.
The volcano base and like the little helicopter and all that stuff. Yeah, no, that was sort of like the quintessential Bond in super reality. That was and it even though it sort of got the secret volcano super base and rocket ships and everything, that was just a bit too much. But
well, and that's where I say you got to kind of keep it in the 60s. Sure, you can still make it a little bit more serious than that.
A little
but
more
I
grounded.
like
A little
leaning
more grounded.
into that whole like fictional fantasy element of it. Is my point of the gear porn, as Paul Chatto likes to call it, but more so of like the imaginary gear porn, right? Like that's the part I felt like that you also, but you also get the fashion, the cars, the type of women, and Bond can be Bond, right? You don't have to have this problem of him, you know, running into some woman who's going to pull some feminist bullshit on him like she would now, or God forbid his Bond woman turn out to be trans, right? Like that's the next thing that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what I have to say in the 60s when women knew their place.
Be like Bond, the crying game version.
Yeah.
I mean, as
Bond
far as a
meets
female
Batman.
Bond, like you guys were saying too, we've had a million different variations on that already.
Yeah, and none of them that I can recall ever really picked up all that much steam. And there's some good movies, and like I like Columbiana. I thought Atomic Blonde had its moments and everything, but they just didn't end up.
I'll even go as
becoming
far back as
franchises.
One Kiss Goodnight.
Oh yeah,
Or Long Kiss Goodnight.
that was a
not
great
One Kiss Goodnight.
Long Kiss
Goodnight.
Goodnight. Yeah, that was a great setup, and they could have done something else with that. But yeah, did what it did. Now
That's
Gina
what I'm
Davis
saying.
goes
So it's
for
not
shit.
like it's not something they haven't tried.
No.
And it kind of goes back to our video game talk. It's like, it's sad to see that not take off, but I mean, they fucked up with Black Widow. Black Widow had the potential to be that
man.
had they brought her out in the first or second phase with her own movie.
Right. And
You
kept
know.
it relatively. Can you imagine a Black Widow movie that was still Marvel Universe, but like grounded in Winter Soldier territory without being like too over the top and too this, that, and the other, like an actual old espionage flick? I mean, there's this fake opening credit sequence that was produced many years ago. You can find it on YouTube. That sets it up. It looks exactly like you would do for a Bond movie, except it's Black Widow. It's got like the silhouettes and all these symbols and things. It's perfect. It picks the exact right song. It's got the exact right imagery. And you look at that and you think, oh, what could have been? And then you look at the Black Widow they made and it's just like, oh God.
Yeah.
Well, that's the big.
Well,
challenge
on
for
the-
me.
I'll see if I can find that.
On you mentioned video games again, Tom, and one thing that always strikes me about them is that they are a storytelling medium, right? But unlike film, they're an interactive storytelling medium. And yes, there's other aspects, there's gameplay and all that stuff, but what video games have that film doesn't is that you are actually in the film. If it's done correctly, if you can really immerse the player, then you are literally in the film interacting with it. And you can interact with the outcome even in some cases. But it's like anything. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a tremendous amount of effort, especially when you talk about altering the outcome. Like a film or a book, it's written, it's there. You remember back in the 90s, they had those like choose your own adventures. Those are fun books, right? But if you've ever gotten into that genre, you begin to understand how incredibly difficult it is. It's why Netflix made one try with that Black Mirror series, and they kind of like they wanted to get into that whole thing where the viewer would use their remote control to choose the outcomes of scenes. And I thought that was a really cool way to try and expand on and evolve the medium. But then they at the time they were talking about making lots of shows like it, and then they completely abandoned the concept because they probably realized how expensive and difficult it is, right? Like if you have one choice, now you need to film two scenes, or you need to write two scenes for each of those outcomes. And if each of those two
tried that
outcomes
interactive
have a
movie
choice,
stuff,
then-
and it didn't really work out too well. And now they
it's
could actually do it a lot
tremendously
easier than they ever could
complicated.
before, right? Because before, how they had to accomplish it was they'd actually project a laser disc in theaters. So like the audience would pick something, and then the laser disc would go to the next sequence. Now with everything digital, you could do it live, right? But you're right. You'd have to film it in a way that's like choose your own adventure, and you're still limited on whatever 2-3 possibilities that you can come out with. But again, you're constructing it. It's more like a video game. Then you're 100% right, CC. But I know Andy was going to say something too there after you're done.
No, I think the only thing I'll conclude there is that if you look into it, especially with video games that try to do it, make these big promises that ultimately fail, right? Because it's like a tree. Every choice has multiple outcomes, and then every next choice has multiple outcomes. And suddenly you have like 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 variations that you need to create, right? And what people do is they get lazy about it in the end because they can't. You can't have 5,000 endings. And it all just comes back to one outcome, right? Because it's easier, it's simpler, it's less expensive.
Yeah. Was it a Final Destination movie, Lord Panther, or was it a Blair Witch Project? But for some reason, I thought one of them did. You're right. Was it Final Destination 2? Okay. Yeah. But was it in theaters or just on the DVD? I think it was on the DVD. But anyway, Andy, you were about to say something there too.
I was just going to point out the thing that has been the problem with Marvel and Lucasfilm. The comic books did this right, where you had your heavy hitters. You had Spider-Man, you had Batman, Superman, and those tent poles allowed you to go into your smaller spaces and create things that weren't going to be as big and weren't going to be as successful. And if somebody had just been smart and just kept going the way they were, and you had your main Marvel continuity, it could have been an empire where you would have branched out. You could have had your main continuity. You could have your cosmic stage. You could have your supernatural areas. You could have your street level heroes. And all these things would have done well. I said this about Andor. If there had been a healthy main Star Wars continuity and title that was just going along, you could have fit in things like Andor that were sort of like the espionage side of the Empire. And you could put in things like that were the Rogue Squadron, people focusing on non-Jedi stories, but just, it's fighter pilots and set in the Star Wars universe. And people would go to those things and would watch them, probably not to the levels, but they ruined it all by, flushing their main continuities down the toilet with all of this messaging and things.
Sorry.
I think the biggest problem they did was I was hoping that DC would have copied the Marvel idea that they were doing. Instead, Marvel copied the DC idea, and too many hands in the pie, too many bean counters in there, making the decisions and forcing the creatives into bad positions.
I think something that a lesson that's been lost is from the Star Wars expanded universe, where you can tell a story within the setting. It does not need to cross over with everything else. The setting, the playground is where you put it in, and then it fits within its own little continuity. It can exist as its own thing. And because the wrong lesson learned from the MCU is everything has to be directly interconnected with the next thing. Everything has to overlap. Nothing can exist on its own. And
that's where they screwed up.
It's unsustainable. It's just unsustainable. You establish a setting and you tell stories within it, and it adds to the richness of the universe. And it also gives you the freedom to do something, like Andy said, that's different. That's not necessarily part of the main set of events, but still is part of the overall tapestry and can find its own audience on its own without having to tie in awkwardly to 17 different other projects.
Yeah, and that's what I've said before, too, about how whether you liked S.H.I.E.L.D. or not, they had the right idea with that and some of their other earlier Marvel shows where, yes, the movies could affect the shows, but the movies were never affected by the shows, right? So, and that's the way the Disney Plus shows should have been structured, too.
Like Netflix, the Netflix Daredevil series. It's like it exists in the setting, but it's
own
not
little bubble,
necessary. It's its own little bubble. Yeah, that's what.
And you can have references, you can have little minor cameos and such. I don't mind that. But no, you're 100% correct, and I agree. Like, because that's been my biggest complaint besides the MCU factor going into this last phase of Marvel was, I've said it a million times over. You're now crushing under the weight of yourself. When I go to Doctor Strange 2, I should only have had to have seen Doctor Strange and Spider-Man No Way Home, basically, to kind of get into this movie, because that's kind of where this leaves off, right? No, instead, it's a fucking sequel to WandaVision, a show I didn't fucking finish, that most people didn't watch, and it's the stupidest thing they ever did in the world, because now you have a television show. Not only do you have a television show, you have a television show that's on behind a paywall on top of it all. So it's not even like it's on ABC or something like that, to where like S.H.I.E.L.D. was, to where like, okay, yeah, you could kind of say, well, that is on S.H.I.E.L.D. on TV. You could go watch it, but no, I'd have to watch it, go out of my way to watch it, and pay for a subscription if I didn't already have a free one through my kid, right? But I by choice quit watching it. And I hated most of the Marvel shows, as most people did. And frankly, they would have been better off had they not tied anything into anything else, so that they could have just gone, you know what, those don't matter. Kind of like they did with S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, they also suddenly forgot the lesson of, if I'm reading a Doctor Strange comic book and he made a cameo in Spider-Man a month ago, who cares? And if he
Right.
does say something about, I ran into Spider-Man not too long ago, all you had in the comic book was a little box that said, see Amazing Spider-Man number 237. And that's all you needed to know. And it's a one-off, and anybody who understands that or wants to go find out that thing, they can do it. Otherwise, it doesn't directly affect, it's not necessary to keep watching this thing. I came here for a Doctor Strange story, not a multiverse, multifaceted, new character nonsense, Bumblebee.
No, you're
stung me and I
100%
killed my
right.
parents.
And that's basically kind of the way No Way Home was, because when they went to Doctor Strange, it was like, obviously they had the relationship from Endgame and Infinity War.
Right, yeah.
But all you had to kind of do is like know that, okay, these two have met each other at some point, basically, because it doesn't even really tie into that otherwise, right? It doesn't carry all that weight over with it.
They don't dwell on it too much, and it just understood, and it's just like,
It's more of a sequel to the first two Spider-Man movies, is my point. Like, he is, as you just said, a guest appearance, right? As far as how Spider-Man knows him, well, if you want to go find that out, if you don't already know, well, this is how you do that, like you just said. Right. But on that note, like, yeah, and that's where I was like, this next phase of Marvel after the big Infinity War saga, they should have spread things out and went more low level anyway. I didn't mind the team ups, right? You give me a Thor and a Hulk movie. You give me a, so-and-so and Spider-Man movie. Like that, I wouldn't care. Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. There you go. You know what I mean? Like, or even Daredevil and Spider-Man, right? Like that would be something the audience like, look at what Deadpool and Wolverine did.
Mm-hmm. Like you didn't want to have happen, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that was the most logical next place to go, because most people are always like, well, where's so-and-so and where's so-and-so and where's so-and-so when some of this shit pops off, right? Well, if you kind of spread everybody out and get them ground level doing their own thing at the same time-ish, then it kind of helps explain why everybody's doing their own things and not jumping over here and helping them out, and the Guardians aren't showing up for this and blah, blah, blah for that and da-da-da-da-da. Because Deadpool and Wolverine works in its own little storyline, right? You don't, even the joke is made that they think that it's Captain America and it's somebody else and so on and so forth, right? That was fun. You can do that. That's the kind of thing you can do with these movies. I wouldn't mind that. But anyway, on the Bond note, we'll get into that in just a moment too. We got a related story. Jason Webster sends an Australian $5, says, my late father always taught my sister and myself to be honorable. His words were his bond. He always there for family, friends, and colleagues. Exactly. Honor means more than anything else. You can follow all the rules all you want all day long, but that's not the point. Jason Webster sends in $5 and says, Sean Connery is the best Bond from Russia with Love is the best Connery Bond films. I don't think that's one I've gotten to yet.
Oh, geez. I'd agree.
This is the one I left off on. I started watching this one and I kind of checked out. Jason Webster sends in another Australian $5. George Lazenby on Her Majesty's Secret Service was hand-to-hand combat instructor for Australian SAS before he became a model. Yeah. I got to get back into him and watch him again.
Best Bond theme song, in my opinion. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, just listen to that theme song by itself. I think it's the epitome of Bond.
I love the music from Bond.
Songs. Yeah.
So
before they started using like pop songs, even though I know Goldfinger's a pop song technically, but still, it just as an orchestral thing, Majesty's Secret Service is perfect.
So yeah, speaking of James Bond and Daniel Craig, this came across, and I really could give a fuck about Knives Out 3, but I gotta laugh at the amount of money that's supposedly being spent on this shit sequel.
I had a question. So this entire series, I think after the first one, this is all like a Netflix project at this point. Netflix paid.
It's all Netflix as far as I know. I think they did release them in theaters for limited engagements. But
right. So my question is, so the first movie had a budget of $40 million. The second movie had a budget of $40 million. The third one here apparently is going to have something like $200 million. So my question is,
why?
Here's the thing. Here's what I'm wondering. My wonderment is, did Netflix say, here's a ton of money? Rian Johnson said, okay, I'm going to use a little bit for my next movie and then use the rest of it for a big send-off when the contract runs out. Or was there some other mechanism taking place that suddenly this money came in, and where do they think they're going to get their ROI from on it? That's my biggest question, I guess.
Let's read this article. Maybe that'll have some answers in it. But yeah, like you're 100% right. Like the first two films were done for pretty much next to nothing. I mean, $40 million. Yeah, that's not a little bit, but that's considering the cast that's in the first two films. the production quality. There's some people who liked them. There's like, yeah, this is, even Andre was like, yeah, this is the kind of movie that Rian Johnson should be making.
Yeah,
and honestly,
was so trash.
I know, I didn't see any of them, so I can't speak to them. What pisses me off about this series is I look at this and I'm like, why is this third film getting $200 million on it when Kenneth Branagh struggled to get a third Poirot film made and nobody went to see it because Disney didn't fucking market it for shit. I don't even know if you guys know what I'm talking about. If you've seen Murder on the Orient Express and the Nile film, they released The Haunting in Venice is what they called it, but it's an adaptation of The Halloween Party.
Maybe because it had Armie Hammer and they wanted to sweep it under the carpet, but who knows?
Potentially, but to me and Andre, we said it's the best of the three films.
You're probably right. I didn't hate the movie.
I actually enjoyed it a hell of a lot more than I thought it would. And he cut the budget on that, didn't shoot it on film just so he could get the third film made. And Disney just buried it, like you just said. Honestly, I don't know why Disney Plus hasn't gotten smart and just given Kenneth Branagh $200 million to make a whole Poirot series for Disney Plus. I'd watch it in a fucking heartbeat.
I would too, more than any of that crap that they give Rian Johnson. But Rian Johnson, he has the best relationships. He goes, he kisses the right asses, he makes them feel good about their agendas. Anytime there's like an ass that needs to be kissed, he'll be there. And they cut him checks. There's nothing I can do. He is one of the biggest, and this is my opinion, creative con men. You know, after J.J. Abrams, who arguably is a bigger, in my opinion, creative con man, I think that Rian Johnson is like the number 2 position in Hollywood. Just a snake oil salesman. I don't know how he gets all these budgets or money. He doesn't deserve any of it, in my opinion.
He has that same punchable grin as Dave Filoni.
Well, I think
Not wrong, they all do.
That's how Kathleen Kennedy likes him.
Well, they're non-threatening men. So
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they know exactly the buzzwords and the things to say. You're 100% right, Andy, I think. And as far as this Knives Out thing, like, look, I could understand if the second film, if the budget had jumped up because of the cast. But now all of a sudden, this one jumps not double, but like quadruple plus, right? Like quadruple plus $20 million.
And this is Netflix's money, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
it is going to have, I guess, I mean, maybe theoretical to say it'll have a theatrical engagement somehow, but how is this, which is still, I mean, they might be popular. I don't know why, but let's say they are. It's still a very niche kind of thing. $200 million for a whodunit movie. I just don't see where the money's going to come from to make up on it.
Yeah, let's see what this says here. Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery, reportedly has a much larger budget than the previous films. The first Knives Out garnered critical acclaim and became a box office hit upon its 2019 release. Okay, so the first one was a theatrical, leading Netflix to buy the exclusive rights for the 2 sequels. The first sequel, Glass Onion, debuted on Netflix in 2022 after a limited theatrical release and also received positive critical response. Wake Up Dead Man is led by a star-studded cast and is slated for a 2025 release. According to the industry insider Jeff Snyder on X, Wake Up Dead Man's budget is 5 times larger than the $40 million budget of Knives Out and Glass Onion, which would put the third film's budget at $200 million. Check out Snyder's post below. I don't know, it just disappeared here. I can't see it.
Well.
Netflix originally spent $469 million to acquire the right. Jesus Christ!
Why?
That was a worse deal almost than the fucking Exorcist deal. Anyway, acquire the rights to the Knives Out sequels. The reported budget of Wake Up Dead Man could be nearly half of what the streaming service paid for the sequels in the first place. So I see that I can't see his post, but what this article is. Well, then why didn't they do that for the second film?
Where'd all the extra other money go?
$400
million for 2 and then 200. What? I don't math.
Because if you split that up, that's still closer to $300 million per movie. When you think about it, because you take 269, split that up so far over 2 movies, add in the $40 million budget they spent on the second film.
Well, no. The first film wasn't a Netflix deal. That was by itself. So
no. I know, but I'm talking about the second film. That's all I'm talking about is the second and third film.
$40 million. Okay, so Netflix plays $469. That's 40 out, so it's 4 29. You take 200 out for the third film. That still leaves $249 million. Just
That's what I was saying. Why weren't they
So,
reporting the second movie with that kind of a?
Because the money
Yeah.
got accidentally lost, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Somebody
Somewhere in
made
the
out like a
books,
bandit.
maybe.
That's for fucking sure.
No kidding.
Ollie Ryan Johnson. He's good. He's good at this. He collects checks all the time for no reason.
Well, he does.
Yeah,
suck
I
a
don't
lot,
get this. This is kind of a weird.
So it's an expensive blowjob, but
Yeah, no shit. I don't see. I get where the.
This doesn't math. This just does not
Yeah,
math.
something's not mathing here. Because basically, okay, if you slap on the entire 469 onto the budget of the second film, I should say. That's probably where I threw you off. That's probably why I said that. I meant the first one that Netflix did.
Right.
Okay. That means that movie alone would have cost them over $500 million if you add on the cost to buy it.
And marketing and
place.
everything else.
Yeah, because it's 469 just to buy the rights, then $40 million for the movie.
Well, let's say
Maybe
I mean,
they made a little bit back at the box office, but
Yeah.
still.
They only have one source on this. So let's say the guy's completely off base. Let's say that this third movie is only like, let's say $50 million. Let's say it's a reasonable bump from the last one. That still doesn't explain where the other $419 million went. It just I don't understand.
The producer
math.
in Ryan Johnson's pocket, basically, is what I'm thinking.
I guess. Jeez. All right.
The cost of doing business, folks.
Maybe.
Wow.
up his nose, maybe.
Well, I mean, unless you account for marketing somehow. Like if you say the first Netflix film, 40 million, so we'll say another 50 million for 40 million for marketing, and then you have a theatrical run which is going to cost you something. So let's say $100 million to run the first Netflix movie.
The way I figure those theatrical runs, they're basically a wash because they're just using them for advertising.
Okay. Yeah, but let's be generous and say $100 million total for both production, marketing, and everything else for the first movie. So $100 million. Okay, take that off of the Netflix investment. That still leaves them with $350 million on the budget.
Because that's what Ryan Johnson bitched about the last time. He said the movie could have made a lot more money had they left it in theaters.
Mm-hmm. So now they make this one, and let's say it is $200 million. I'm an English major, not a math major or a business major. Somebody else is going to have to explain this to me.
I think somebody's getting paid big time.
Ryan Johnson and J.J. Abrams are just the right height for something.
Yeah.
you must be this tall to produce this movie?
I got molested in a little boy's room.
Thanks, Tom. It always brings a smile to my face.
Oh, no.
Oh, Lord. I mean, I just don't understand this. I mean, is it really worth this much to Netflix?
No. Well, somebody, I guess. Yeah, the second movie was absolute garbage. Ryan Johnson, at his quote-unquote best, I guess. And now $200 million for another one of these things. It is such an ego trip. And why do they keep giving these guys hundreds of... This is like Concord. This is like Concord the movie.
Yeah, no, I didn't really plan on even talking about this, but since it tied in with Bond and all that kind of.
Oh, I'm just fascinated by the numbers and
because
the
I could
logic
care
behind
less.
it.
But yeah, no, I mean,
as a bellwether for the industry thinking, I think is the only thing that's interesting to me about this story.
But it's Netflix. For a movie like this, it has no special effects. Is the cast really that big? I mean,
I would think if it cost $40 million, they put it in a regular theatrical run, it could probably make a profit off of the geriatric audience that goes to see it. That's fine, right? But
okay, so you got Glenn Close, whoever that guy is,
Moriarty,
Jeremy Renner.
Mm-hmm.
Is that? I can't.
That 70 show.
Is that who that is? Mila Kunis? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that chick. Okay, so how are they any more expensive than anybody else they've had in the movies before? I don't get it. Somebody's getting rich like a motherfucker.
Or this is like an Adam Sandler production, and it's all going to payoffs and checks for people, and it's going to be a relatively modest production.
all my friends to the vacation.
That's right.
I'm thinking that's what The Acolyte was. You paid Leslie Headland, you paid her again for writing, directing, showrunner, and then you paid her wife to put green makeup on.
Act, yeah.
Act in parentheses. Oh, Lord. All right. Well, let's see what you guys are talking about out there. Well, we only got one super chat here. Michael Nemo sends in 5. Thank you for that. And says, Knives Out, brilliant, glass onion, trash.
Pretty much.
Yeah. That seems to be the consensus on the panel and through most people. Yeah, I don't know. Not my cup of tea when I heard it was basically Clue remake.
Oh, I'd rather not have a Clue remake. Just put Clue back.
That's basically what it was, from what I heard.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Except for
it wishes it were Clue.
Well, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I got one more thing to leave us with. There's this new movie called The Apprentice.
Yes.
With
Not
Sebastian.
with The Acolyte.
Not to be confused with The Acolyte. Thank you.
Yes. The Apprentice is the Jedi version.
Yes. My young apprentice. It's got Sebastian Stan as Trump. So let's see how they treat
so it
Trump.
is based on that.
I guess so.
Very excited to talk to you.
What the fuck is what is wrong with his face?
I don't
Do the
know.
people who made it have TDS or
I don't get this.
I understand, like, maybe not wanting to turn it into a caricature, but
it is a caricature now.
Well, I know, but I mean, as far as like could he? Unless I'm missing something by the time he speaks more, is he not even trying to put on the voice a little bit?
That maybe, but it almost looks like the prosthetics that he has on his face are affecting the way he's talking.
Oh, that could be it too. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. He's
you're right. Gary Ambrosia does the best Donald Trump impression. And we were discussing this the other night. He said, like, a lot of it has to do with the shape your lips are in. And he did it. He said he was did the cadence and did the everything, and it did not sound like Trump. All he did was kind of purse his lips, more like he's about to spit, and then all of a sudden, it became Donald Trump like that. So there's, you're gonna have a problem with it if you're trying to. I mean, maybe he should just stick to being Luke Skywalker, but.
I mean, he looks like Eddie Murphy in that SNL skit where he does whiteface.
Yeah.
Hello.
When's this coming out?
Okay, now maybe my image of Trump is just like shined by years of myth and everything, but at that age, was Trump really that self-conscious and uncertain about his attitude?
I mean, honestly, if they're trying to go after him, if anything, they're making him look more human and humble.
That's also true.
Yeah,
that'll be the funniest thing if you actually watch the movie and he'll be likable. Or like maybe all the stuff that they think he's saying is bad, maybe we'll laugh. You know what I mean? I wonder how this movie is going to turn out.
It looks like an HBO special. Is it an HBO?
It does look like one of those HBO
it looks like
movies.
A Lifetime movie of the week more than
yeah.
Well, it's a cheap ass company. It had a $16 million budget. It comes out in October, I believe, in theaters. Looks like.
Okay.
Bunch of small production companies involved.
You don't need much for something like that, so that's fine.
Yeah, it's going to be released just before the election, of course. So, yeah.
Of course, October surprise.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, but nobody's going to watch it, so.
And I don't recognize anybody else in the cast at all.
Yeah, you got Jeremy Strong from Succession.
Is that what he's got?
Yeah.
Who that is.
Look, there's only one reason for this. That's because Sebastian Stan is lobbying for Mark Hamill's blessing to play Luke Skywalker.
Oh, he's playing Roy Cohn. Okay. So that's kind of what I think this movie is going to be, is kind of showing that he's been shaped by all these other horrible people, probably.
Oh, so he was just an innocent babe in the woods, and then he was like...
I mean, hey, that's their mistake if they do that.
So the apprentice refers to Trump and everyone around him turning him into what he became.
Yes, I think so. I think so.
Okay.
From that clip, if I had to take a guess.
So it is the Acolyte.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gonna die like a fart in the wind.
No, it only had a $16 million budget, believe it or not, Darth Maul.
The power of one, the power of two, the power
But if Trump
of
made it, be like,
nine.
it had the biggest budget in the world, biggest budget ever. Never been a bigger budget for a movie. Spectacular budget.
Trump comes out and endorses the movie. It's like, yeah, I think everybody should see it. It'd be great.
I just saw that a Trump movie, the Apprehension. We're gonna get him. Oh Lord. So anyway, we'll have to see how that goes. That Reagan movie's doing pretty well, though. I don't know if any of you guys saw that, but
No.
I'm thinking about trying to see it. But I got to go see
I
Beetlejuice.
considered seeing it, but I didn't have time.
I want to see the Tim Walz movie, Seabiscuit.
Oh, that's the end of the show, folks.
I'd like to see Cenk Uygur interview Tim Walz over that one. They can commiserate. Uygur Walls.
You know, Mr.
Walls.
Walls, I've thought about chugging some horse cock myself a few times.
Oh!
You all right? Yeah, just a little hoarse today. What are you doing later?
So, I call it going to the glue factory.
Oh! Put him.
Ouch.
Is that glue or goo?
Glue. It's all the same. I'm glad I don't like horses. Can't fuck a turtle.
There's a response to that I'm going to hold back.
You can try, but
Yeah.
no. Oh Lord! All right, kids. I think
I was going to say.
challenge accepted. Ew.
Yeah, hand it to Seth Rogen and see what happens.
Oh,
you'll never
there's all sorts of holes you can put your wiener in here.
I'm going to give him a property like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh, it's great. God. Napoleon Dynamite.
Stock up on diapers. You're gonna need it.
I wanted to bring up something real quick, and
There was, yeah. Go ahead.
I put up the link in the chat, but so there's a lot of news going around about the casting of Hal Jordan for the Lanterns movie series or whatever else they're working on. And as soon as I saw that apparently the first choice is Josh Brolin, and I wanted to ask you guys something. There is, especially with Josh Brolin as sort of like the poster child for this, there seems to be a comic book movie actors aristocracy for portrayals now that is getting a little repetitive. You got Thanos, you've got Cable, and possibly Hal Jordan.
Josh Brolin's second 15 minutes of fame should be up by now.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is not just Josh Brolin, but just like even like otherwise, should these roles be going to like spread the wealth a little bit instead of having the same people in these comic movies over?
Well, that's where I agree with the Matthew McConaughey is probably a good choice here. Ewan McGregor needs to go fuck himself. I don't want to see him in another movie ever again.
Well, I think Ewan McGregor fucked himself into a problem. That's his now he's trying to, because of his actions, he's trying to be so politically correct.
Yeah, I think
because oops, I tripped on the set and my penis landed in Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah, the woke folk forget about that so quickly, right?
Yeah, I could see McConaughey as a sort of veteran Hal Jordan. Sure, he hasn't really done comic book movies or stuff, so that'd be fine. But I'm just talking in like sort of in a general sense of like, when Marvel was first starting out and everything, they had Chris Hemsworth, a relative unknown to the world as Thor, and you do some other things. You take some chances as some unknown actors so that their stardom doesn't outshine the character as much. So I don't know. That's just my thought.
Plus, you would keep your budget down.
That too. Well, that too. Yeah, get a good actor at a reasonable price.
Yeah.
And someone that can actually deliver a performance that's unique and not just, it's Josh Brolin in a movie or Matthew McConaughey in a movie or something.
Right.
Anyway, that's my thought.
Yeah, I think Josh Brolin has. I've enjoyed him in a lot of the stuff he's done. No Country for Old Men, he was great in, but
yes.
Yeah, Jonah Hex. You know,
Yeah, Michael Nemo sends in 2 to remind us he was also in Jonah Hex. That's right.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Josh Brolin okay, but he's in like everything, and I really did not like him as Cable.
No.
Yeah, oversaturation.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting with him. He's just oversaturated.
I like Pedro Pascal, just too much. Just pick and choose your battles a bit more. But anyway, yeah, McGregor for
Pedro's
having
another one. Yeah.
Yeah, McGregor for having shit all over Star Wars fans. Just shut up. Stop.
Is Pedro going to step in for that role Joaquin Phoenix walk away from?
In the oh, that's right. What was that? What was that one? Like he was. Did they ever explain like why he specifically why he dropped out of that movie at the last second?
From what I understood, there were some very, very graphic scenes in it, and I think that he was probably looking at that like, I don't know that I want to be associated with that image sticking in people's heads.
Because Joaquin's usually been pretty avant-garde with some of his theatrical choices before, so that it must have been something crazy if he wasn't into it.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's just like every time that envelope is pushed, it just keeps. Now they're sliding it right off the table. They're basically going right into softcore. So you're.
Yeah. Now you want softcore, you want the VHS store back in the 1990s. Those were the days. Oh man.
Well,
Andy Sedaris. Bring back Andy Sedaris, gosh dang it.
I gotta warn everybody, I forgot there was one more thing I wanted to talk about before we lose the audience.
Too late.
Wow.
What is it?
Yeah. The suspense is killing me.
Oh, you guys not hearing the for fuck's sake. So did you guys not hear the cheers and everything earlier?
No.
Nope.
No. Oh, of course not. Like my shit's been all fucked up, and every time I go on EV Mux, it gets all fucked up even more. So
that explains everything.
Okay, well this show definitely has an R rating now.
It's still not working here. Hang
it's
on.
always a bad idea.
I tried
Hello,
to
can
do
you hear me?
the
Okay.
singing stream the other day, and I didn't know that the whole stream, the audio was the worst ever.
Shit did Grace say this week?
All right, now we're working. So all my noise effects weren't working the whole show. That's fucking amazeballs. So Grace's review of Beetlejuice is out.
Oh, okay.
Overall,
Oh, God,
I liked this film, but there's an aspect to it which is complex. It's complicated, particularly approaching the film as a female, not just a female critic, but a female viewer.
Okay, so what could that possibly fucking be? Well, here we go. Let's find out.
Perspective. We'll see how it affects the film. At points, it also reminded me of giallo films, or giallo, Italian horror films, particularly from the 1960s and 70s. And we discussed these a few years ago when Hollywood was also inspired by them. Malignant, a film that I really enjoyed.
Sorry, I wanted to get to the fucking point here.
They also focus very strongly on women and tend to be, let's say,
okay, here we go.
very adult. Now, is that the right inspiration for the sequel to a mainstream family film? Probably not. Somebody maybe, artistically, I get it. But I think, again, from a business perspective, if Tim Burton and his, the writers, I blame Seth Grahame-Smith or whatever. I think it's his fault. But if they were like, this is the direction we want to go in, I'd be like, interesting. But you do realize the audience for this movie, right? And I think it's great to broaden people's horizons, but let's just say Beetlejuice 2 is rated PG-13, and parents, I would take that rating very seriously. It's not even that overt, but there's like an undercurrent that I think
Okay, here's where she gets into the crutch of what has me worried now.
Seeps in, that you're just going to want to be aware of before you take anyone, say, under 13 or even just around 13 to see this film. And also, if Burton and company wanted to truly go in this direction, I wish they'd, as Beetlejuice himself says in this movie, be willing to do the work. Because Beetlejuice 2 focuses on the Dietz women. And no spoilers, but let's just say that the sequel is actually deep down a film about men abusing women. I mean, again, you're like, this is a big Hollywood blockbuster.
Deep down, does that mean that's what she infers from it?
That's what I'm wondering. That's what has me
They're all
worried.
victims. They're all victims of men.
She's an unreliable narrator. I can't really, I have to take this with a grain of salt. I mean, it could be that she's right, but I have to see it myself because I don't believe her one way or another usually.
I agree. You guys, like, she does have her own warped perspective on things, so, like, I'm kind of concerned here, but I'm like, okay, what does this mean overall?
I mean, you got the school scenes with Jenna, right? Is she going to have some abusive boyfriend and then still like and all that stuff? Or
Yes.
No, I expect it from
The answer is
Beetlejuice.
yes.
He's a bit of a, but
The answer is yes. Someone at the high school is going to be harassing her, doing something else, and that's going to be part of it. I'm guessing because we saw that one scene in the trailer where she's like having to tell off the mean girls.
Yeah,
There's gonna be
operative
some-
word, all girls. Like, so the
Yeah.
girls are the bullies. It's going to be interesting to see how they manage to make somebody the bad guy. I mean,
Well,
ironically, they had the best bad guy there, but they didn't put him in the film, because that would have been.
Yeah.
are you talking about Jeffrey Jones? Or
No, I
Alec
was talking
Baldwin?
about Alec Baldwin.
They're both equally bad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
no
know,
Gina
equally
Davis
bad,
either.
but they're both bad.
I'm surprised no Gina Davis unless she makes like some kind of surprise cameo, I guess.
No, she's not in it. Gary talked to her when we were in Dallas.
Hmm.
He went up to autograph. She's like, "No, I'm not in it." So
Oh,
Yeah.
that's bizarre. Okay.
But yeah, Steven, I'm going to go see it Thursday. I don't know if the rest of the panel is going to go see it with me or not. The show will go on after I get back, probably anywhere between 6 and 7 p.m. Central Time, whenever I am lucky enough to get in the door.
I'm seeing it tomorrow.
You're seeing it tomorrow already?
Yep. And
Cool.
actually today I had such an annoying thing. I got an email saying that there's a pass for tonight, but I was driving and I stopped the car, and that 1 minute until like I stopped the car and tried to like seize it, it said that like I was too late and it put me on a wait list, which
That
never got
sucks.
back to me.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't get to see it till Thursday. So as soon as the show's done, I'm gonna rush home and fire up the stream and talk about it. So we'll see how it is.
But
So
seeing
anybody,
it tomorrow is good. I'll be like an early
Yeah.
person to watch it.
yeah, you might as well get a review out early.
Yeah. Like maybe I can do a stream after I see
Can't
it.
wait to hear how much you hate it.
I'll do a stream with myself.
I'll actually be surprised if you like it because you don't like anything.
Okay, we'll see what
like,
happens.
like Timothy Chalamet. Jeez. Wonka.
No, he always comes on not liking anything.
What a Grinch.
He is kind of. Well, we love our Grinches.
Grinch of reason.
Yeah, you have to have a little bit of reason sometimes. So yeah, that was all I wanted to share with that. That was the thing I was forgetting earlier. I was like, there's something else I'm trying to remember.
I'm hoping it's good. It's the one thing I'm looking forward to.
I was like, no, you should just leave it alone. You've gone almost 40 fucking years without a sequel. Why now?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not like you ever had a sequel before. It's never been sullied by anything else. They've tried for 2 decades plus to try and get another movie made. It just hasn't worked out till now.
Cartoon was great. Those early scenes.
it was
of cartoon
fine,
back in
yeah.
ABC, I loved it. It was great. Taking
Yeah,
something
I mean,
gross and turning into
it's a
something
little
fun.
different than what the movie was, but it worked for what the cartoon was, and it was well put together and whatnot. So,
Well, I have
It's fun.
enjoyed Afterlife and Frozen Empire, so I'm hoping that this will give me 3 that I like.
Oh.
It doesn't have to be. They're not great. They're not high art, but they felt like Ghostbusters movies to me.
yeah, I mean, I didn't like Frozen Empire as much as I was hoping to, but
Yeah, I think
I
they
had
tried
to defend
bring
it more
much
than
too
anything.
character- I thought there were just too many characters in there shoved in, but
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
But I think if they're trying to make a launching point where if they can, and again, like Tom, you pointed this out, if they had put it out in summertime, when you wanted everybody is really, especially this summer, was super hot. Everybody could have wanted to go into a theater in the middle of July and go see a ghost movie. That would have been great. I think that the timing would have really launched it higher in the box office. I'm just hoping this is somewhat entertaining, and if it's half decent, I think it should last through the Halloween season anyway.
The only thing that gives me
Beetlejuice is
hope
going
for
to do
this,
great.
yeah, the only thing that gives me hope for this versus some of the other like Ghostbusters things is that at least it's everybody who made the first one effectively, and it's not being handed off to some poser or pretender like, oh, I'm going to carry the torch for it. No, you got at least the people who care enough about the franchise are putting their backs into it for this one. So that at least gives me some hope for it.
And I think that Winona Ryder. I'm sorry, guys.
I'm saying that the problem is that in I don't know how many years, it turns out that these people that you bring back to kind of do what they once did well don't know how to do that thing well anymore. It's kind of like a gymnast or something. After they're like 20 something, they have to retire. You know what I mean? Maybe that wasn't a good analogy, but I'm saying a filmmaker at some point, if now he's like 70 or 80, he's not going to suddenly be awesome again. Usually he's going to look around. There will be a few young people around him that tell him all this woke crap. And he'll be like, yeah, I want to be cool with them. I'll make this movie really woke and they'll love me. And that's how we got like the last maybe 7 years of filmmaking. So I mean,
Tim Burton could be like a Francis Ford Coppola where like his time has passed, but he doesn't quite realize it yet. I guess we'll find out.
Well, I think he has realized it.
I think everybody realizes it, including him.
I was going to say,
because coming back to this.
I've been researching this quite a bit for a video we're hoping to get done before the movie comes out, if it works out that way. Basically, like, yeah, the script they have for this is a reworking of the script that's been sitting around for 10 years. And it was basically during Wednesday, the making of Wednesday, I guess, that Burton had the impetus to decide to do this again. And it was a different take on what they had there in the initial script, I guess, because it became more about, where would Lydia be now, like with a fucked up family like that and all that kind of shit. Just, because that was the character that he had kind of associated with in the original film at that time, being a young emo himself. So like he's like, okay, so where I'm at now in my life compared to where like she would be in her life, that I think is the interesting hook here, right? So that's where he kind of got his juices, and he admitted that he has not been making shit that he should be. He basically sold his soul to Disney, in so many words. And I mean, I've said this the other night on a show, I don't remember what show it was, or on the morning show, one of the two, where I think every director has this moment in time where they hit a film where they have a very emotional and personal attachment to it, and it doesn't perform well, or it's not accepted by the audience or the critics. And from that moment on, they just start basically going through the motions, and they're not the same person anymore. And Tim Burton was one of those people, I believe, post Mars Attacks. I think Mars Attacks was the movie that kind of broke him. And the reason I say that is because that was one that he was very attached to. He was pulling shit from his childhood with his love for both, the goofy meets the macabre, with especially the Topps cards and all that kind of shit that they came from. And that movie bombed at the box office, was received horribly, and I feel like it didn't get a fair shake at the time. And I mean, I've watched it just the other night, and it's like it did not. I feel like it holds up much better than people because if you know what Burton was doing, he's making fun of all the 1960s stuff, and if you know what he's doing. The problem was it came out right up against Independence Day, so you have this uber serious movie doing and they are exactly the same movie, because that's what, if you look at it, it's basically Tim Burton making fun of the 1950s and 60s sci-fi alien invasion movies meets the disaster film. And that's what Independence Day was a disaster film. So that was the problem you had these two movies. One was the comedy version of it, and the other one was the super serious version with Will Smith.
It came out too early. It should have been like
if it came out a year later.
So.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree with you, or that Christmas or something like that. But they came out literally within, I think, a week or two apart of each other.
When I first saw, so I was a big fan of the Mars Attacks cards, like before there was a movie or anything, because I had some of them that were left over for my dad and everything. And so when I heard there was like a Mars Attacks movie, I was like, oh my God. And then the trailer for Independence Day dropped, and I thought that was the trailer for Mars Attacks, that opening thing with the shadow going over the city. I was like, oh, this is the Mars Attacks movie. Like, wait, this isn't Mars Attacks. What? And I didn't even know what ID4 meant at the time because there was no internet. So I was just like, what the hell is this?
That was one of the first things I remember looking up on the internet, actually, Scribe.
it's like ID4. Like, there's where were the other three? What? So anyway.
Yeah. Well, and they had to do that because Independence Day was actually another movie that had come out a few years. This is actually back then when they actually gave a shit about this. Because like now I think they threw this out the window and they don't care anymore. Because like now you look up the movie Payback and there's 100 movies called Payback.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and they didn't call it Point Blank because they didn't want it to be too associated with the original, and you know it's its own thing. But like they needed a name that kind of worked, and then now you look at it, and in that time, you know, it's like every movie had a different name. Independence Day had to be Independence Day ID4 because of that other movie that had nothing to do with the aliens or anything like that, but it was just already a title for a film that came out 10 plus years before. I think it was 1983. Right, so we're talking 10 plus years. Now you can get a dozen movies in 1 year with the same fucking name. It's insane how they do that now. I don't know why. They used to give a shit. But anyway, we've gone a lot farther off the beaten path than I wanted to. But Jason Webster sends in a $5 Australian super chat to say, public service announcement. Viewing a series like Acolyte risks developing PBSFDS, pathetically bad science fiction distress syndrome. Have a nice day. You have been warned. Thank you, Jason, for that warning. And yeah, I'm glad I haven't really watched much of The Acolyte. So yeah. So with that, I guess we'll talk to you guys on Thursday if I don't see you before then. But hit that like button on your way out the door. We appreciate that. Check out Scribe Light. What do you got going on?
Well, let's see. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, I have TED Excellence, where I take a look at off-brand or otherwise TED Talks with TEDx Bingo to learn something and have some fun and some laughs. And then I also have a series that I've been working on for a while called Living on Borrowed Crime, where I interview true crime content creators and have panels and such. I'm planning on later this month having a panel discussion after we all binge the Menendez Brothers series that's coming out on Netflix this month, talking about that crime from way back when. But also have a couple other interviews I'm working on. And sometime soon, don't have it yet because Script Doctor's a busy guy. I'm going to have Script Doctor on because there is a panel discussion about TV writing from not too long ago featuring Gina Davis talking about, inclusive TV writing. And I wanted to get somebody on who was a professional and expert in that to see what Gina had to say and what how relevant that is to his interests. So that's what's upcoming on my channel.
Cool.
Yes, very.
How
about you, CC?
Sorry, yes, thank you.
Me? I have a karaoke channel, and sometimes we sing karaoke on it. We haven't done that in a while. We could do it this Friday. We'll have to see if that goes on or not.
I tried doing a singing stream, but I messed up the sound. It was awful.
You made the mistake of using StreamYard.
I didn't know that was a mistake until I heard it afterwards, and I was really, really annoyed.
So people seem to enjoy it, but now you know.
Andy, what do you have going on?
Yes,
well,
Andy.
No one wants to hear me sing. My children just be like, "Daddy, please stop." I will be on Ranker Steve's show later tonight doing or Man's Best Friend episode of Manorama.
Tell them I said hey.
Dogs. I will be discussing dogs. And tomorrow night I'll be on Doomcock show. And we will be discussing Road Warrior.
All right.
Ooh, I love that movie.
Just walk away.
So good. I'm actually playing the Mad Max video game right now again after a year or two. I love that game too.
Mel Gibson can he's great to watch in anything.
There is only one Mad Max.
Yeah.
True.
As far as I'm concerned.
I'm okay with the second one. You know, there's two, maybe three.
No. I mean actor.
Oh, yeah. No, acting wise, it's him.
Yeah. No, I hate Furiosa and Fury Road shit. Yeah. I never even seen Furiosa, but still.
I can understand some people may like things he said in his personal life and not, but there's no denying that you can't have those movies without him. If you're not going to let him be Mad Max, I don't know. I don't see the point of doing all that crap. Personally,
I know it's not popular, but I thought Mad Max Fury Road was proto woke.
Yeah, no, I saw it and I just thought it was all right, but I didn't think that it met the hype that was surrounding it.
I got so much shit for shitting on that movie Price when it came out. I'm like, it's a fucking shitty movie. I'm like, first of all, nothing in that movie tells me why Mel Gibson can't be playing Max. Secondly, he literally gets sidestepped and shoved into the back seat through most of the movie if he's not in front of the car. And then they literally drive in a fucking straight line for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Only to turn around.
It's a shit movie, man.
It's a ripoff of Road Warrior that everybody got goo goo gaga over because of all the fucking special effects in it. And that's the other thing is like, oh no, it's all practical. It's like, fucking newsflash, 90% of that shit was augmented with CGI. And I'm going to tell you another thing. If gasoline is in such small supply, you are not going to be running big, huge Bigfoot fucking trucks with flames shooting out of their fucking exhausts if you're like that hard up for gas. I'm sorry. And I don't want to hear about some video game that fills in a plot line where there's some new gas refinery or some shit either. No, that doesn't count to me. That's homework.
No.
Yeah, no. I think that it came out before The Force Awakens and then before Ghostbusters 2016. And I think people just were happy that there was anything going on with Mad Max style thing that, you know, it looked visually, it looked pretty cool.
I come out of it, I said, it should be called Mad Max Didn't Do Shit.
And I would have said the same thing as you, but at the time I wasn't even online. I was just sitting and talking to myself. So even if I thought that, nobody had time to get upset at me. But I totally agree with you. The movie, I never liked it.
If I want a good car movie, I'm going to watch Gone in 60 Seconds.
Right? And I even liked the remake of that. I as fucking weird and bad as it is, or whatever you want to call it, goofy, like Nicolas Cage makes that movie.
He makes
Giovanni Ribisi. Yeah. You put Nicolas Cage in almost anything, the movie can be horrible, and it's at least watchable because of him. So maybe if they'd had him play Mad Max, that would.
Can you imagine Cage as Mad Max? Oh my God!
I'll help you if you give me gasoline.
I'm mad. I'm really mad.
I'm mad. I'm crazy. But you can call me Max. Why couldn't you just put the gasoline down?
Ghost Rider 3.
Oh man, if only.
I'm giving the no space sound in space argument for Mad Max. Well, it's true, dearest. Like you go from and I got in this argument with somebody, I'm not even gonna say who, about this whole thing. I'm like, they're like, there's no continuity of the Max movies. I'm like, they may say that, but you're full of shit. You know it's the same character, and it's actually a progression. You see him go from, and the world progresses. And there's some people like, well, I have a hard time believing that the world would go to shit that fast. I'm like, motherfucker, all they had to do was say everything's shutting down, and everybody went crazy and bought every fucking roll of toilet paper they could. You don't think the world wouldn't fall to shit in a few years, if not months, if things went the way they did in Mad Max, where gas was like gone and all society had broke down, right? Like that's where Mad Max starts, is at the beginning of that, right? Where these gangs have kind of taken over, the society has broken down, government has become so corrupt and broke down. We're at the edge of our fucking, resources. That's where Mad Max begins. Then you get to Road Warrior, which is like, what, 5-10 years after the fact? By then, yeah, people would be so fucking just, you'd have no electricity. We'd be feral as fuck by then.
There's
we would basically degenerate to what we were in the Dark Ages. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, if you want to see a sort of spiritual prequel to the Mad Max series, look up the movie The Rover. Australian outback movie, kind of a Western. It's a stalking kind of. It's great. Yeah. It's great. If you haven't seen it, it's got very small cast. It's got Pattinson in it in a really great. That's
where I will agree with George Miller that yes, he structured the films where Max is basically like the man with no name. That's fine, but we're still understand because he has the same car. Right. And then even you get to Mad Max Thunderdome, which I know some people don't care for as much, but I will say is a hell of a lot better film than Fury Road was, because at least he's still Mad Max in that movie, right? And I mean, even there, you have a whole city now that's being run by pig shit. Like, that's where we've gotten. Because you're right. Like at that point, the people who would know how to turn things into fuel and be efficient or whatever, they would be like the top tier people running shit. And everybody else would basically be like scrounging around for scraps and raping and pillaging everything they could at that point. That's kind of where things would get after about a decade or two, especially after a decade or two. And some people are just like, oh, I just don't feel like it would. No, we would, you would notice a change overnight if all hell broke loose, right? Believe you me. You think the Summer of Love was anything? Psh! You ain't seen shit.
The old saying, any society is 3 meals away from a revolution. So
exactly,
you and as dependent as we all are now on other people to provide us the things.
That's my point. Think about how stupid people are now. Yeah, exactly.
We're so dependent on gadgets. We're so dependent on the grocery store. I'm not criticizing anybody for the sake of that. That's just the world we live in. But
if you would have made the argument that if this had happened in the 1960s, I'd agree with you. We would have probably survived a lot longer. You want to know why? Because kids were raised with things like Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts and other kinds of things and programs to where they learned how to survive. Right?
I mean, I'm living in a place right now that's a long way away from a small town. And it's like a field. And there's people who just park here permanently, and they get up in the morning and they go fish in the river, and then they cook the fish and they eat the fish, and you have the river, and the river's being fueled by like glaciers and pure water, and it's like the world ends. This is the last vestige of humanity right here, just living the life,
and we'll
just
coming
keep
for
going
you,
and fishing and eating the fish, and life won't really change much for the people.
No,
right here.
In some areas, you're right. It'll take years to notice, but like all the metropolitan, like America would fall apart in a matter of months. Like you seen the shit with the Chaz and all that shit. Like, if we lost electricity and shit tomorrow, all hell would break loose. Like, you're not wrong. We're 3 meals away from a revolution at that point. Like, because nobody knows how to cook anything. Nobody knows how to build a fire. Nobody knows how to survive. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying like the general population now, because a lot of these generation of kids that are underneath us even didn't have a lot of the education that we had, and they haven't had the experiences we had. Like, I'd love to see kids get back into that kind of stuff and survival, right? Like, I mean, does a kid even know how to build a fire now?
I worked in a supermarket in the Northeast, and you get a snow scare and the store is wiped out. There's nothing left in there.
That's what I'm saying. Like, does a kid even know nowadays the difference between the right kind of water to drink and not drink?
No.
Do you not drink still water and shit like that? Like, do they know that?
As a society, we suffer from an illness of abundance and instant gratification, because unlike the generations before us that had to like live off of the land or make as make do, or they had the World War II, they had to like recycle their grease. They had to find other things in order to save resources for the great effort and everything. There's not that sense of at least not as great as it used to be, of self-determination and self-sufficiency. And eventually it's going to bite us in the ass. It's just inevitable.
Well, that's where my point's coming in, Scribe. Like, right? Like, even if things were to happen like they did, like I said, let's say that this whole thing came to a big, huge, like during the Cold War, everything went to hell and somebody dropped a nuke. We lost all power. Everything went to shit all over the world. Back then, we probably would have reverted right back to the way we were in the Old West times, right? Like in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Things probably wouldn't have regressed so badly. It would have taken us another couple hundred years to rebuild, but maybe 100 tops, but we'd have found a way. Now, that's why I said back to the Dark Ages, because because we are so lost as a society that everything would be it would be worse than Mad Max, right? Like, we would be just depraved, fucking feral people out there roaming around, killing and maiming and just trying to scrap for everything. And those who do know how to survive would be like CC up in Canada, living off the land, away from all the craziness.
Yeah, you want to see a good example of that? There's a movie from the 80s called Threads. You can look it up and get it free off the Internet Archive.
That sounds interesting.
It is a British production. It is a very, very realistic portrayal of the after effects of a nuclear exchange in Britain and everything else. And it is it is a horror movie. It's not
Yeah.
it's not R-rated or anything. There's only a couple of deals, but it's a TV movie. But it is one of the most disturbing things you'll ever see because it doesn't take any prisoners and it doesn't try to gloss anything up. It just says,
I'll have to check that one out.
it's you can find it on. I think you can find it on YouTube for free. You can find the Internet Archive. It's about an hour and a half long. It is dire, and it's a warning. But it's also great. It's a great horror movie.
Yeah, I feel like we're teetering on a ledge we haven't never really teetered on before, since probably way back in the Cold War days. But anyway, exactly, Goddess. Nobody knows how to kill and clean animals now, and to cook them properly, and preserve them properly. That's what I'm saying. Like, this whole society would just break the fuck down instantly, because... Yeah. And they would be sitting there with their iPads that don't work going, I can't look up how to start a fire. I don't know how to cook this thing. Yeah. Anyway, did everybody get to plug their shit? I think they did.
Oh, I have a stream tonight at 11:45.
Oh, did you get to? Okay.
PM.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Night Owl. It's at 11:45 p.m. and you could see it on my live channel, Price of Reason Live, and other platforms.
All right. And with that, I think we're going to wrap this up. Oh, and Scribe's sharing threads right there in the chat for you guys. So check that out. I have to go start editing a video that is probably going to be a nightmare to edit. But thank you all for being here tonight. We appreciate the support. Take care of yourselves and each other. Check all these guys out on their respected channels. And until next time,
yeah. Excuse me, ma'am. No porn at the bar.
Oh, it's okay. I'm transgender.
Oh, I had no idea.